You lose, baby boomers. At least that's what new data from the Pew Research Center suggests some millennials may be saying from now on. For the first time in the United States of America, there are more millennials than there are baby boomers. Of course, Gen Xers have been used to that for a while, being squeezed in between the boomers and the millennials. They've been the small middle child for quite a while. But what's really interesting about this new fact is not simply the generational shifts that are going on, but why they're happening. It turns out the greatest single driver of growth among millennials in the United States of America today is immigration. New, younger people coming to America and seeking their fortune. Sounds like a story from a bygone era, doesn't it? In fact, it is, and there are important ethical and political lessons that are going to be shaping us now and for a while as we move into the presidential elections, right around those themes. It turns out that this flooding into America of immigrants in that millennial bracket is very much like the last time we had immigration-driven growth in this country along those magnitudes. The time between roughly 1890 or 1885 and 1910 or 1915. And in those 20 or 30 years, there was explosive immigration into this country from Southern Europe, from Ireland, from Central Europe, from Eastern Europe, Jews, Italians, German, Irish, flooding into this country. And, not surprisingly, because we see similar rhythms today, there was an America First response by some. There was the setting of immigration quotas by others. There were even discussions, even though it sounds like it's ripped from the headlines today, of building walls and barriers to keep those darn immigrants out. Here's the amazing thing. That period of immigration into this country led not only to an explosive growth in the number of people who would become citizens and call America home, but to levels of intellectual, economic, commercial, and artistic productivity that were absolutely unprecedented. In fact, many, if not most, of the things we call best in America of the 21st century were created by people who came here as children or were born to new immigrants at the beginning of the 20th century. So if the millennial generation is growing, and it's growing precisely because of young immigrants, it should take us back to a previous time when, yes, there was great controversy around it, but now we can look back 100 years later with profound gratitude for all the capacity and energy and greatness that that period of immigration brought. To be clear, though, and that's what makes this a little more complicated, if we want to learn from that era, we should learn from its whole story. It was also a story in which those new immigrants and their children, brought here as babes in arms or born here to those new immigrant parents, learned English. Assimilation was not a bad word. The idea that acculturation, while not ever meant to be the erasure of your ethnic roots, should have included some level of integration with the traditions of America that one found here. It seems to me the 21st century challenge is to neither give way to the worst fears of today or the early 20th century regarding immigration, even though some would have us do just that, but also not to demand the erasure of past culture as some offenders did. What if the challenge of 21st century millennial growth is to acknowledge the gift of immigration, not to fear it, but to celebrate it, but to also do so as we unapologetically make a claim that Americanization is as much an important part of immigration as is fearless acceptance of so many of those, if not all of those, who would call this country their new home.